Greetings and salutations, people of the internet. K.U.E.Z Rider here. Godzilla Planet of the Monsters showed us during its first minutes a small introduction that tells us how gigantic monsters were taking over the Earth, until the arrival of Godzilla and his imminent conquest over the human race, and how it could not do anything against the king of the monsters, and the plague that follows him were driven to flee to the stars. It wouldn't be long before a pair of two novels were announced that would serve as a prequel to the previous events, in the trilogy delivered by Netflix, where we are told in greater detail the fight that both humanity and the monsters themselves had against the great threat that Godzilla represented, and you're about to know the story. Greetings and salutations, and welcome to part 1 of the prequel story to the Godzilla anime trilogy. This is Godzilla Monster Apocalypse. May 4, 1999. The first giant monster appears. Kamacuras attacks Manhattan. A horrible giant mantis that ends up destroying the World Trade Center, continuing to devastate the rest of the Big Apple, being followed by an unknown number of larvae that crawl under the city's subways, causing among these a large number of human fatalities. After 72 hours of battle, the first Kamacuras was killed by a bunker buster bomb attack near Portsmouth, New Hampshire. At some point that same year, the Chinese government found a colony of microorganisms with a sludge-like texture in a waste mine in Hebei province. After a series of studies, this material was converted into a biological weapon, taking on the appearance of an eerie mist with two hideous red eyes floating from the current. September 2002. A second monster, Hedorah, appears, emerging from the stars and attacking the Russian space station Mir, then descending on the city of Manchester in London. The creature was capable of absorbing thermal energy from attacks by the British militia. However, it was eventually eliminated using chemical plants in the United Kingdom by using toxic chemicals based on the venom of an unknown spider. After 2 days of intense fighting, structures such as Big Ben and London Bridge were severely damaged. Approximately 3.9 million people were killed. Just 2 days after the attack, two more monsters appeared. Two specimens of K.U.E.Z emerged in the Pacific Ocean. The first appears in the Philippines and the second on the island of Guam. November 2005. Two more giant monsters appear. Anguirus appeared in Siberia and Rodan appeared in Baitu Mountain in China. Gradually, both monsters turned to the city of Beijing, China, and began to fight each other. Based on this, the Chinese military responded by testing Operation Hedorah. The Chinese government released Hedorah on both monsters while they were walking near the Great Wall. Hedorah began to corrode the skin and flesh of both monsters, leaving only their bones as a vestige of their existence. However, shortly after the victory, a chemical reaction in the colony of microorganisms that made up Hedorah caused them to reason and go crazy. Moving forward, finishing what was left of Beijing and then continuing with Taiji. During the night of its devastation, Hedorah consumed some of the pollution in the area, causing the death of 8.2 million people. 2006. A second Anguirus, simply called Anguirus II, appeared in South Africa. February 2012. A 10-meter monster called Hedorah was discovered by the young man Alberto Ichiro Santos in the Amazon jungle. Hedorah, with a vile intelligence, cruelly tortured and murdered the native animals of the place, such as crocodiles. According to certain reports, the same young man, with the help of a native woman, used a spear attached to an explosive, which ended up wounding the monster, causing it to fall into the river, where it was devoured alive by the same animals that it tortured, crocodiles and piranhas. In that same year, the monster Megalon appeared on the west coast of Africa, where it made its way through the place, destroying any nation that was in its path. After this event, the first continental migration in history began, carried out by the people of North America to escape to Europe. However, many of these caravans were sought out by the monster Hedorah, taking the Mediterranean Sea as its territory and preventing all the caravans from arriving safely. 2015. The USS Saratoga, a powerful aircraft carrier created to combat monsters, managed to annihilate an Hedorah and perhaps others like it during its life at sea. November 2017. In the South Pacific Ocean, an American nuclear submarine, Seawolf, made contact with a sea creature of colossal dimensions, the Gara. Consequently, the U.S. Navy, including the USS Saratoga, faced the monster in American Samoa in a fierce battle, successfully wounding it. However, his blood was loaded with microscopic creatures called Barum, which contaminated the water from that point to the shores of Pago Pago. For 3 days, it caused the death of a third of the local population as a result of the infection. December 25, 2017. On Christmas Day, the Gara approaches and arrives on the Australian coast. However, the Australian Navy avoided starting a battle due to the risk of contaminating the waters with its toxic blood, thus allowing the Gara to completely devastate Sydney. As the Gara advanced towards Newcastle, the Australian government fell into deep despair at not knowing what to do with the monster, and in the midst of all the chaos, the wrong order was given. The Gara was killed in an Australian army attack, where he was seriously wounded and later died from his wounds. Government fears came true that the Gara's blood would contaminate Australian waters, causing a deadly pandemic followed by famine, causing the death of 3 million people until 2018, an event called the Red Christmas Scourge. January 2021. A huge flock of griffins appeared in Egypt, managing to completely devastate the city of Cairo. These monsters eventually reproduced, causing a huge plague in Egyptian territory. 2022. Megalon continued its attack on South African territory, since its first appearance, completely destroying the Republic of South Africa. After this series of events, the population of the African continent was reduced to a shadow of what the continent once housed. The rest of the population, numbering between 300 and 400 million, tried to escape to Europe or the Middle East. On May 11, 2022, the monster Orga caused great desolation in Izmir, Turkey, where the largest refugee for Africans fleeing to Europe was located. The response of the government and the militia was very slow, allowing Orga to reach Ankara, where a fierce battle was fought, especially long-lasting, due to the regenerative qualities of the monster. It eventually ended with the death of the beast, however, at the cost of 1.5 million deaths during the battle and 10 million deaths it added to the attack on the shelter. During the same year, the monster Manda made its grand appearance in the Atlantic Ocean, taking it as its absolute territory, attacking any vessel that had the audacity to enter its domain. Tolerating only monsters like Godzilla or Ganymedes, which seemed to act as allied forces, while in the Pacific Ocean a giant octopus was doing its thing, sinking boats. 2024. The monster Maguma emerged in North Korea, destroying everything in its path, and then entered Seoul, South Korea, where the United States took advantage of the opportunity to launch a tactical nuclear missile, which ended up annihilating Maguma. Historically, it was the first time a nuclear weapon was used against a monster. 2029. The monster Megalon reappeared after his massacre in Africa, devastating both Pakistan and India, just as they were recovering from a nuclear war between themselves. That did not stop the monster, and it continued advancing to the Philippines, destroying the defense lines of the United States, which were settled there so that later it would continue forward until reaching Japan. Specifically, to the Ryukyu archipelago, Megalon fought against the joint forces of the Americans and Japanese in a tough battle, which Megalon ended up winning. Landing on Blue Beach, Okinawa, once Megalon set foot on that beach from among the nearby rocks, a huge creature emerged, a monster of the local folklore. King Caesar had awakened from his slumber from Cape Manzamo, challenging Megalon to hand-to-hand combat. Both beasts fought like prehistoric animals in a savage contest, until finally King Caesar managed to kill Megalon with his bare hand, leaving him unrecognizable. King Caesar roared in victory and walked a little way, until he collapsed dead from his wounds. King Caesar managed to save Okinawa at the cost of his own life, a sacrifice that will never be forgotten by humanity. 2030. An exponential increase in missing and destroyed ships had begun, exceeding the capabilities of the giant octopus in the Pacific Ocean. Even a nuclear submarine was reported missing. On May 29 of the same year, a K.U.E.Z named K.U.E.Z-4 was found stranded and dead on the beaches of Odo Island in Japan. After investigation, the prestigious Dr. Kohei Yamane came to the conclusion that this K.U.E.Z was killed by something larger, a super predator that had not been seen before. The K.U.E.Z had one right arm torn off, and a hole in its shell, so hot that it was still melting. Dr. Yamane called this predator Godzilla in reference to a mythological sea dragon which according to stories lived nearby in relation to the folklore of the island's population. Shortly thereafter, the city of Los Angeles was attacked by three monsters at the same time, a Varan, a Baragon, and an Anchorus. However, based on the way they acted, it seemed as if they were running away from something, or someone, and at that moment a fourth monster emerged from the ocean. It was Godzilla. Godzilla generated a kind of electromagnetic pulse before launching an energy attack from his body, which suddenly ended with the death of the three monsters. After this, Godzilla continued walking, and he himself devastated the city of Los Angeles, and thanks to his electromagnetic pulse, he had destroyed all automatic weapons. The city was defenseless. Godzilla caused the death of 8.7 million people after his first attack, followed by the destruction of San Francisco at that same day, after which he returned to the sea. December 2031. Godzilla returned to the United States, this time to the West Coast, destroying Seattle and managing to humiliate the defense lines of Colorado Springs. In desperation, the launch of 150 nuclear warheads on the monster was approved, generating a power of 40 megatons. However, to everyone's horror, Godzilla emerged from the craters, and after this returned to the sea through the Gulf of Mexico. The current President of the United States, in a live broadcast, declared that this monster was the Red Dragon of the Apocalypse, before taking a gun and committing suicide live. And with that, we conclude part 1 of this story. Hope you all enjoyed. Like, comment, and subscribe, and may we see what happens next in part 2. Sayonara.
Hi, it's me, XPC Ultron, from the famous YouTube channel XPC Ultron. First off, I wanted to say that I'm super sorry for this video taking so fucking long. It isn't Quest Rider's fault. He sent me this video like 7 months back. But you see, I have something called laziness. And aside from that terrible condition, I also have something called not knowing how editing works. So I was like in the middle of learning how to use CapCut, which I do think is getting better. Wonder what you guys think. And then I saw this new software called Kdenlive, which got recommended to me, and it's free, and I got a new PC, my bad, so I can use it, and it was going super well. But the thing was, I didn't know how to use Kdenlive, so I had to learn how to use Kdenlive, which made the video even like longer to make. And I also suffered from laziness, which took the video even longer to make. And then like a few things I didn't know how to do in Kdenlive, which I needed to do, such as music. So I just like went for a whole trouble just to put that video on my sorry for the language, on my phone. And finally I was able to edit the video with the music and all. Another thing I wanted to say is thanks Cyberraptor for his wonderful art. And the music here is not owned by us. It's owned by either Toho or CapCut, since I was able to find it in CapCut. And we also use some additional art from other artists, which will be credited with the music as well. Thanks a lot. And if you're wondering, the videos will be longer since I actually know how to use Kdenlive and CapCut. And I am logging in, so yeah. Another thing, again, thanks Cyberraptor for all of this. And since Cyberraptor, I'm pretty sure is a Hispanic YouTuber, and me and Quest Rider are also Hispanic YouTubers, we thought, why don't we credit him with a little Spanish section right here. Gracias Cyberraptor un montón. Perdón que el español se sonaba medio mal, es porque cuando hablo español así para YouTube me sale mal porque soy mejor hablando inglés para el YouTube y me sale más natural el español cuando hablo con otras personas, pero cuando estoy aquí hablando en una cámara todo solo en mi cuarto es un poquito extraño como suena. Pero gracias mucho por todo y espero que tu channel suba más. Also, subscribe to CyberRaptor and ShinQuest Rider. You can visit my YouTube channel, which will upload more videos. And sorry for the shameless plug, except for CyberRaptor. Thanks him, he's a goat. And have a good day.